Okay, let's get started. Raise your hand if over the last month you've given somebody acknowledgement or asked them how they're doing. Raise your hand if you've been going through hard times and somebody has come to you and cheered you on and put you back on track. Okay, thank you. So, what that shows me is, we all know community. Community is something that's going to help us defeat this pandemic of soldier suicide and suicide in general. You may not know this, but the veteran suicide rate, those 6,400 folks that we talked about earlier, is 58% greater than suicide in normal average society. 58% greater. Of those 6,400 folks that committed suicide, 2/3 of them showed no sign that they were going to commit suicide. None. No one could have expected it. And you know what happens when no one expects it? They say, "Dad, I wish I would have gave Omar a call. I wish I would have gave Katie a call." Right? After the fact, when we're going to the funeral, that's what we said. Here's where Stop Soldier Suicide is making an impact. They're trying to get ahead and put the community in place to support that veteran prior to them taking their life or suicide taking their life. Why is that important? Because we can always count on community. When community gets ahead, community can say, "Hey, did you go to the VA today? Hey, have you taken your medication today?" Etc. Right? So get you ahead in order to prevent you from having suicide take your life or invading your cockpit. I think of my brain as my cockpit, my heart is my engine. Little story about me. I suffered from PTSD with no treatment for 20 years. 20 years. But it gets deep. I came back from initial invasion of Iraq in 2003. I was a light cavalry scout, a lot of combat, so a lot of missions. Made the run up from Kuwait to Baghdad, was on a lot of scout patrols, and it was my job to engage the enemy, and if I could destroy the enemy, we would destroy it. If not, we'd go to a mountaintop, sneak and peek, call for artillery, or we'd wait for the big tanks to come through. I was part of the Thunder Run in Baghdad. So when I came back from being deployed, I knew that I had some issues. I was jumpy, I was very short with my friends, and I was trying to find new and exciting ways to get myself not to be thinking about what happened in Iraq. I knew I needed treatment, but it was just easier for me to put white rum in a bottle of water and just walk around like I was drinking water all day. It just was easier for me. So, when I finally said, "I'm going to get some treatment," something else happened to me. I ended up having a brain tumor. So I had a brain tumor, and I had 18 hours of brain surgery, emergency brain surgery. And so as I was recovering from this brain surgery when I went under, I had a couple other issues going on. I was the primary caregiver for my mother. My family was dependent on me. I needed to make money. So I never had a chance to just stop and get help. So as I'm sitting in the hospital, recovering from brain surgery with PTSD now from brain surgery as well, because I had to do a will, etc. So imagine being 25 years old, having to write a will for all your belongings, assets, etc. And then when I woke up, it was like I saw angels standing in front of me. But while I was sitting there recovering from that brain surgery, the only thing I could think about is, I need to go make money. How am I going to make money to help my family? And so somebody brought in a Newsweek magazine, and I saw that Columbia Columbia Business School put out the highest earners from going to Wall Street to work a job, specifically investment banking. Now everybody in this crowd, if you know investment banking, you know investment banking for 100 hours a week. Right? You know that. I didn't know that. How would I know that? I was coming fresh out of the military. I didn't know that. And so, while I was recovering from the surgery, I actually studied for the GMAT in my hospital bed. You know, I didn't have a TV, sitting in Walter Reed, studied for the GMAT, went and took the GMAT, scored over 700 on the GMAT, got into Columbia Business School, and they gave me a full ride. But there was an issue. My doctor said, Omar, you need to not go to business school. You should probably take a year off and let the sutures heal that are in your head and get off of pain medication. Because at the time I was taking all kinds of really good pain medication. But I didn't listen. And then I called Columbia. I said, hey, what do you guys think about me taking a year off? And they were like, yeah, man, you can take a year off, but you're going to pay full price for the school when you come next year. So I don't have full price money. I guess I'll be going to Columbia Business School. So I ended up going to Columbia Business School, ended up going into investment banking. And what was beautiful about having an investment banking career, but also having PTSD, is that I could work 100 hours a week. I could work on weekends, because you know why? It was keeping me from sleeping. It was keeping me from being alone. It was also, I get off work at 2 a.m., I grab my buddies from the bank, and we were going to tear up, downtown. I mean, the problem was, I had now had the assets to do whatever the heck I wanted to do, and everything looked great on the outside. How many of y'all have ever traveled to Russia? Great. I actually went to Russia for 2 weeks and did the underground hip-hop scene in Moscow. You know how it does that, right? But it made me so I didn't have to sleep, so it was great. I went to Medellin, Colombia. Anywhere I could go to get a buzz to keep me from having to go to sleep and think about it, I was doing that. So let me tell you this. What finally saved my life? COVID saved my life. So for most people, COVID was oh man, I'm trapped in the house. But for me, it was you can't go anywhere. You have to actually sit in your house. And so what happened during COVID, my ex-girlfriend became my girlfriend, who's now my wife. So she moved in with me. So I probably had community. I moved back to Charleston, South Carolina from New York City. So I had my mom down the street saying, hey baby, how you doing? No, really, how are you doing? So it got me thinking about that. And I finally enrolled myself into the VA system. So help was on the way, but help didn't come right away. My cockpit was still being invaded. I was still playing around with a gun on my lap, thinking about taking my life. The promotion wasn't coming, thinking about taking my life. It just really made no sense. So I hit rock bottom in 2023. I was back in Charlotte. I was working at Wells Fargo, and my text messages started blowing up. One of my good friends, who was an executive at Walmart, this guy was making $1 million a year. So it wasn't some veteran hanging out on the corner. He was actually running operations for the Walmarts. Took his own life. Became a victim of suicide. So if that could happen to that guy, surely it could happen to anyone. But it got worse. A month later, another one of my buddies from the academy, doctor, anesthesiologist, running anesthesiology at a hospital, took his own life, died by suicide. We never saw this coming. Who would think that a medical doctor and a guy making $1 million a year at Walmart would commit suicide? We didn't see it coming. But what really got me, what really took me to rock bottom, my gunner died by suicide. But not only did my gunner die by suicide, he took his 3 kids with him. Okay? I knew those kids. And I had just talked to him a week prior. He lived in South Carolina. Just talked to him a week prior. Took his 3 kids with him, and then took his ex-wife's boyfriend with them as well. I hit rock bottom. I said, man, if my governor can do this, this is something I can do. And at the time, my wife, we had a child. My kid was a year old. And I said, man, I'm an old dad. Look at this gray beard, right? Like, I'm old. My daughter's 3. At the time, she was 1. I was like, I gotta be around for the rest of her life. So I immediately called suicide hotline, got on the phone with a young lady, and got myself to that VA to start my process. And my process consists of me having weekly counseling sessions, and every morning I have to take medication for the things that are going on in my cockpit. And I'm happy to admit that now because I haven't felt this good in 20 years. I can tell you I haven't felt this good in 20 years. And so I'm not gonna act like it's easy. It's not easy. It's not easy, right? I can't drink anymore because I'm taking these pills. So like if I take the pills and I drink, then I can't do anything for the rest of the day. Every time, I have counseling session on Wednesday, and every Tuesday I'm like, damn, man, I don't want to talk to that guy, right? I don't want to talk to him every Tuesday. But then I get there and I talk to him, and I feel good. It's like come out of the gym, talking to this individual, right? And so for me, now I have that community. But here's the deal: I had to raise my hand, and that is the hardest thing for veterans, successful people, anybody to do is raise your hand and say, I'm going to get that treatment. Because it's easy not to go to the doctor. I mean, what do we normally do? You break your leg on Friday, and you're like, man, I'm going to the club tonight. I'm going to go with the broken leg, and I'm going to doctor on Monday, right? Like, the busiest time at the emergency room is Monday, right? And then you end up not going. So, when Stop Soldier Suicide, their mission is to reduce veteran suicides by 40% by 2030. How are they going to do that? The old way is you wait for the veteran to call, go to the hospital, call a line, right? That's the old way. All the onus is on the veteran. The new way, where Stop Soldier Suicide is coming in, is through the Black Box Project. They get the data from folks who have succumbed to suicide, and they understand early warning signs using data so that they can bring that community in on the front end, so we're not sitting around saying, man, I should have called that person. I should have gave them some support. So you're probably wondering, why have this airplane up there, right? Wondering? Okay, we're talking about the Black Box Project. And I want to talk about how community and how the Black Box is important and why Stop Soldier Suicide is carrying that Black Box legacy on. So, there we were. September 11th, 2001. If you're 35 years or above, you know exactly where you were that morning. You know exactly what you were doing. I was in Kosovo at a traffic control point. When it came across the radio, towers been hit, towers are down, Pentagon's been hit. What else is going to happen? Block the airspace, and me and all my guys were like, buddy, we going to war. It's coming. If you're 35 and over, you know where you were at that time. There was one more flight. United Airlines flight. 93. Let's go. 45 minutes late, this flight was, sitting on the runway. When that flight took off, husbands, wives, kids wrote on the cell phone, texting their people on the plane and said, hey, there's been a couple planes that have ran into the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. Folks on the flight were like, uh-oh, that's not good, as the flight was in the air. At that point in time, the hijackers had already taken over the cockpit. And so the folks on the flight, regular folks, just like this audience, they had a decision to make. Are we going to let them take this plane and run it into the nation's capital, the White House, we don't know where this plane is headed, or we're going to take back that cockpit. So they made the decision to take back that cockpit. And so these folks had trade cards, etc., banging down this door. They banged that door down so hard that the hijackers actually got scared and were like, we gotta crash this plane right now. So they're gonna crash this plane in the middle of a field in Pennsylvania, Shakespeare, Pennsylvania. That's where the flight went down. I tell you the story because we would have never known about the heroism of these folks if it wasn't for the black box. And what the black box told aviators, aviation companies, governments across the world is, we need to secure this cockpit. So now a lot of flights that are going across the country, there's an armed federation on that flight. You probably didn't know that. The doors to the cockpit are sealed upon takeoff. And can anybody get in? You need a code. And if the pilot happens to leave the cockpit, there's somebody stationed in front of the door. So that's my way of saying that community sacrifice has made airline flight safer. That sacrifice of the families that are given the data from those personal devices to stop soldier suicide, they're doing the work in order to get ahead so the next family, the next group of friends don't have to suffer. So that's why I asked you to support Stop Soldier Suicide. So that we're not sitting around saying, man, I should have called them. Man, that was a good person. I didn't see it coming. I want to be there one day where these rates are down 40% and other organizations can learn from the Stop Suicide Black Box Project and take suicide down across the board. I really appreciate you all taking the time out of your day, being here tonight in support of Stop Soldier Suicide. Thank you, and God bless you.